What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Riverview Wellness Podcast. Sierra here, your host, and today we've got
Reed Hammond, the co-host.
Welcome back. It's been a little while since you've been on.
Since we recorded one, yeah. It has been a minute. I wonder if the releasing of them feels like it though, you know?
Yeah, but I don't know. Bi-weekly. Make the people wait a little bit for it.
Yeah. Hold your breath.
All right, so today we're going to dive right in because we got a lot to cover, but big picture, we want to talk about why resistance training matters for most people. What benefits does it provide for your life? Practically, what does that actually look like? Do you have to carve out 1,000 hours out of your week so that you can make sure you get your time in the gym, and it's going to take up so much of your time and be so complicated and you don't know what to do at the gym? Or is it simpler than we might have previously thought? So there was recently a systematic review of a bunch of systematic reviews.
Yeah, kind of like a meta-analysis.
Yeah, basically means that this meta-analysis is looking at a ton of different studies that have been done, technically studies of studies where they make conclusions about it.
Yeah, they compile a bunch of different things. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and summarize for you. And it's by the American College of Sports Medicine, and it's their position stance on resistance training, prescription for muscle function, hypertrophy, and physical performance in healthy adults, and overview of reviews. That's the title. So if you want to look at that, and we can also link it.
It's pretty comprehensive, yeah.
I don't know. You want to give?
Well, yeah.
What is the study?
Well, I'll just say, in terms of the stuff we talked about a little bit before we started this podcast, I know we were looking at it, and the study's pretty good analysis of different types of training and the effects and benefits of those kinds of training, changing some variables around, seeing what's effective for what kind of training and stuff like that. But before we even get into all that, I was just going to say, I was shocked to learn the percent of people that aren't actually training, because we talked about this a few times, right? And we were both kind of shocked in different respects. I'm a little bit more pessimistic. I assumed there would be less people training than there are, but you said...
I thought more people were probably doing resistance training.
And it was, 60% of people?
Yeah, 60% are resistance training, are not resistance training at all. They're not doing any. 30% are doing at least 2 days a week consistently. And it said of that 30%, we're looking at maybe 10-ish% of that 30 is older individuals, which also...
Yeah,
I'm not super surprised, but I'm surprised that just the populace that needs it most. It's a great thing to build a foundation for when you're young, but yeah, some of these things that it helps so much with, that is exponentially decreasing once you hit a certain age. It's like age 30 or 40 that muscle strength, bone density, all these things start decreasing, balance.
But yeah, well, all that to say is the whole point of this conversation is to hopefully help people understand, and apparently help a lot of people understand, how important resistance training is and how much it can improve their quality of life. I mean, we mentioned briefly, and mentioning some of these figures for how many people are training, the statistics of frequency, right? You said some people are training inconsistently, some people are training once or twice a week, but it should just, if you look at the information, it should be encouraging to anyone who's not training right now, because that's honestly the biggest hurdle to getting into all this stuff, is just starting to do it. But it should be encouraging to everyone who's not training that to start, you don't need to put in 1,000 hours immediately right off the bat, right? The frequency of training, it just has to be consistent, and you can start with something small once or twice a week and see a lot of benefits from that, right? So just as an encouragement to everyone who's listening right now, just keep that in mind as we go on and talk about the benefits you can get, because the bang for your buck is really there, right?
Yeah, well, and we'll dive into a little bit more later, practically speaking, what this study actually said about what does matter versus what's not as important, because I think we see a lot of people get hung up on particular details and it needing to be a certain way and feeling overwhelmed by what all they need to do. And this study is great because it's telling us, I mean, I kind of knew this, but it's always helpful to like have a paper that's
get a
backing
number,
it.
put a
with
number on it. Yeah.
This is looking at over 30,000 participants that this is reviewing, where it didn't take much to make some great benefits.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people need to start when they're looking at training, or when they're looking to start getting into training, right? Like they need to understand that the benefits are not confined to the aesthetic, right? Like it's not all about going into the gym and leaning out and losing that fat that makes you look the way you don't want to look, right? That's a huge part of it as well, right? Like you can obviously change your self-image in training and whatnot, but even more so than that, more importantly than that, right, is the health benefits you get from it. And the consistency of training that you start to employ throughout the weeks, throughout the months, right, can go so far and do so much for your longevity and your quality of life, right?
Yeah. I think one of my biggest pet peeves as a trainer is you can sometimes catch a vibe from people about when you introduce yourself, like, oh, I do fitness coaching for people.
Mm-hmm.
And then they immediately assume that you just make people skinny, get people curvy, and help them build big muscles.
Yeah.
And you're like a meathead. And I'm like, there is so much more to I mean, to kind of outline here, like big picture, what resistance training can do. Well, and you want to define like what are the different buckets of resistance training? Not to get too in the weeds, but there's different ways, just a point that there's so many options. And this study kind of covers how those different options.
Yeah, well, I mean, kind of generally, you can
things.
imagine them in kind of like big categories like hypertrophy training, power training, and strength training, right? Which are all looking to kind of, what would you say? They're all a little bit more specialized once you get into these specific things, right? So hypertrophy has the end goal of specifically building muscle. And because you're doing physical training, obviously these things kind of like, they have a lot of overlap between the three of them too. But we'll talk more about that later in terms of specifications for each of these things. But just knowing that there's a lot of different ways to go about it, depending on your goal, is super important as well, because people, when they hear resistance training, they think to themselves aesthetic, and then without realizing that, they think
lifting these giant bars. And
exactly, right. And that's like largely.
And this is pointing to you can start at home with body weight exercises and gain strength.
It's a very low hurdle, right? To get over.
I mean, you can improve strength, power, muscle mass through resistance training. That's what we just said. But you can also improve your gait speed, which to be able to walk well, because I mean,
or just more effectively, right?
Yeah, your ability to get up out of a chair quickly, like to some people, again, seems like a small thing, but for the average person, they hit a certain age where suddenly those things start to become harder. And if you equip yourself for that early on with some of these simple principles, you can offset the cost of that. You can improve your balance, which again, something that starts to decline and people end up tripping and falling and hurting themselves. And once you break something, another thing breaks, and then you can't lift, and then your muscles and your bones start dwindling away.
Yeah, it's a huge quality of life thing. Like, you don't realize how important it is to be able to get out of a chair until you can't.
Yeah.
Right? Or until suddenly that thing you remember being second nature to you is a concerted effort, you have to will yourself out of the chair and struggle out of a chair, right? And nobody wants to be in that spot.
But a lot of times people don't think about it until they are in that spot, or they watch a loved one who is close to them in that spot. And I hate that that's where we're at.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff you can do preemptively, right? Like we said, so many people get in their head, the gym is for one thing, training is for one thing. Certain movements are just for people looking for a specific goal, right? But doing any level of training is going to have a huge amount of benefits across a broad spectrum of things, including your ability to just generally move, right? Which is going to impact how you live day-to-day life every moment of every day, So
yeah, I make the comparison a lot. It's important to distinguish the difference between, I think, what a physical therapist can do for somebody versus what a full fitness coach can do. And this is one of the beautiful things I think about what we do, or what even the gym and just a gym routine and finding a fitness program can do for somebody, is a PT's job is to help with acute inflammatory conditions. Usually you were in a car accident or you had something major happen. It's not always the case. I mean, sometimes you have something chronic and a PT can help you with that, but their thresholds to help you are about 80% usually of the reality around what you actually want to do. Like to give a very specific example, I've got a friend who just talked to me about it, that his wife, she threw out her back. She's been doing PT. PT has been helping, but like she's not living optimally. She's back to where she can like walk around and she can sit and she can eat and she can do like some of these things, but like they want to travel a bunch and there's still just like some limitations with that, where we take that one step further. For every person, this could be applicable, where you can now start functioning out, walk up and down those stairs without any issue at all, get in and out of bed without that, I don't know, pain you're always feeling when you get in and out of bed, or the difficulty that you feel.
And that's exactly what I 100% agree with you. You talked about people not even realizing that they need, or their body is as weak as it is until something terrible happens to it. Like, if you're at the point in your life where you're considering like, oh man, now I've got to be careful about how I do stuff because I'm maybe a little bit older, or I have a previous injury and I don't want to, injure myself again or throw my back out, right? A lot of people think that the solution to that problem is just living more carefully, right?
Yeah.
So what they're functionally doing is they're preemptively cutting away parts of their life because they don't want to engage with something that's going to injure them. When in reality, you don't usually have to cut a whole lot away at all. And instead, just by engaging in functional resistance training, right? And that is, once again, just a very low barrier of entry. It doesn't have to be anything crazy. You can mitigate problems like that. So your back is stronger now. So you're not as worried about throwing it out, and you don't have to cut out, I don't know, that hobby you have where you meet up with your friends on the weekend and play a sport or something like that.
Well, and one thing I found it was interesting in the discussion section of this study, they talked about how some individuals don't participate in resistance training because they believe that it's going to increase their likelihood for injury, or they're going to get injured doing it, which they negated that and said there is just as much risk for cardiovascular exercise, which that's another thing that some people have a false belief that cardiovascular exercise is all that they need. And
sure,
there are benefits to both. I mean, this study said that a lot more people have heart attacks from the cardiovascular work than they do this stuff. And they referenced somebody who ended up like tweaking something, doing some resistance training, but they were doing the movement incorrectly. And so when done correctly, it is very safe for anyone from age 10 to 80 years old. It's going to look a little different for different ages and demographics of people, but yeah, like it is low barrier to entry, low risk. You're going to gain pretty significant benefits to quality of life within, I don't know, this was anyone from 6 weeks plus in a 2-day-a-week training program.
Yeah, just a very short period of time, right? The changes happen pretty fast. I honestly think that's the biggest thing a lot of people need to do to start resistance training. And that is, even before you start resistance training, understand that what's preventing you from resistance training is a misconception 99 times out of 100, right? Like, if you think it's going to be a huge investment, not necessarily at all, right? You could do it at home. You could do it, in very short periods of time. You could do it just a couple times a week, right? So it's not a huge investment in terms of your time or your money necessarily. It's not an injury risk. Like, you're not going to hurt yourself doing it. And in fact, it's going to allow you to do more stuff that you want to do, right? People think it's just the purpose of it. It's just for aesthetic, maybe. So like you have all these misconceptions in your head, and they're preventing you from doing something that'll just be obviously good for you, right? So that's my main encouragement for all these people who are, sitting at the door right now and not willing to step across the threshold, right? Is just think for a second. What's my problem with resistance training? Why am I not doing it? Am I worried about time? Am I worried about injury? Am I worried about, misprioritizing like what I'm doing? And just realize like it's all good. There's nothing that should be stopping you at this point. Once you can kind of like refocus everything and put everything back in its proper place and kind of align yourself with reality.
Yeah. Well, I think we will end there today because we kind of wanted to touch on like there are a ton of benefits in doing this. Mm-hmm. Like resistance training is great. The study points that out in a lot of different ways. And so we're going to continue in this little series with a part 2, kind of talking more practically about what actually is true when it comes to resistance training, what actually is going to create some of these benefits for you. Got anything else to add before we?
No, I think I'm good for now.
Jump topic. Okay. Well, this is the Riverview Wellness Podcast, empowering you to live and move well. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave us a review. It helps us reach more and more people. Thanks, guys.